Atomic Monsoon.
Welcome to the Monsoon.
Hello, hello, hello. Happy May, everybody. It's Atomic Monsoon.
Mayday! Mayday!
Ah, take cover!
Yes, it is May 1st, 2020, and welcome to another episode of Atomic Monsoon.
Indeed. Welcome, everybody.
And
We're
thank
still
you.
in quarantine.
Yeah, we're still at home. Still don't have our fancy studio mics, just our personal headsets. But that's okay because you know we can still share the fun even if we don't sound quite as good.
Indeed.
I want to say thanks to our friends at Def M Records for providing our intro music.
Thanks, guys.
And if you probably aren't, but if you are listening to this episode today on May 1st, 2020, Bandcamp has decided that they are giving all money spent on any music today to the artists. So please check out our friends on Def M Records on Bandcamp. If you go to defmrecords.com, it should just redirect you to their Bandcamp site, I believe, and if not, there will be a link to it. So DEAFMRECORDS.com, or check out some of the individual bands like the Saturn III, or One and Done, or the Rainbow's Beard, or the Dead Gear. There's all kinds of great stuff that you can find, and some new music. And right now, today, all of it goes straight to the artist.
Yay.
Yeah,
Do it.
Speaking of artists, this is an awful segue.
Yes.
So, Steph, you had the idea to talk about some of our favorite movies by decade?
Yeah, so how this came to be is I was sitting on my butt, like you do when you're at home, and I was watching a couple of just videos on YouTube, and one of them was from Watch Mojo, which is a great site that does like top 10, top 20, top however many videos about things, and they were doing this one of the top 10, 20 movies of this century so far.
Okay.
And I was watching it, and I was just like, wow, that's really cool. And then as I was watching it, I suddenly started thinking about, this would be an interesting episode of Atomic Monsoon to talk about our favorite, not the top, our favorite movies of maybe like each decade. And I kind of decided, why don't we start at the decade when like us as hosts were born? I mean, you were born in the 80s, I was born in the 90s, but like start in those decades.
Okay.
And then if we want to, we can go earlier and everything. We obviously can't go much later than 2020, but
right, yeah.
Because the future hasn't happened yet. But
yeah, that's why it's the future. Even in Back to the Future, past 2020 hasn't happened yet. So
that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So I wrote down a list of some movies. I know we talked about maybe doing between 3 and 5, and I came up with 6 favorite movies for both the 80s and 90s. So I don't know which one you wanted to start with today, or
I thought we kind of stick with the 80s today, and we can check out the 90s maybe later.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah. So how many did you end up with?
Strictly just 80s movies. I kind of started off, I kind of have the same number.
Okay.
I mean, I have one honorable mention, but other than that, I have pretty much kind of the same number, like 5 or 6. Yeah.
I have 6. One of mine is effectively going to be an honorable mention because I don't think there's much to say about the movie. I feel like if you're listening to this show, you've probably seen Akira. So that's my honorable mention.
That's a good honorable mention.
Yeah. Akira came out in 1988 originally in Japan. I know it took another couple years or so to get translated to English and brought to the States, and then the dub that you can find now came out in 2001, but the original release in Japan was 1988. Therefore, it is technically an 80s movie. Also, it takes place in 2020, or very near in the future, because the Olympic Games dome was in part of the movie. So,
and the Olympic Games were supposed to happen in Tokyo this year.
Yes. That I think that was part of. I don't know if this is true, but like allegedly part of the reason Japan got the Olympic Games in 2020 was because of Akira. That
is the most amazing reason ever.
And allegedly Akira was going to be part of the opening ceremony. Now, obviously, because of COVID-19, the Olympics have been pushed back a year. Hopefully just 1 year. So we'll see how all that goes. But yeah, Akira was outside of Astro Boy and Speed Racer. It was kind of like the first big anime thing that we like a lot of Americans got to see.
Mhm.
So yeah, I thought it deserved a reasonable. It was worth talking about.
Indeed.
Yeah.
My honorable mention. So I was looking up like a list of movies and everything,
Mhm.
and of just that came out in the 80s, just thinking like, okay, which of these have I seen? Which of these do I enjoy? Which of these have I actually gone back and watched multiple times? And one movie came up, and I decided to put it as an honorable mention because this was like a movie of my childhood I thoroughly enjoyed,
Okay.
and it stars one of my favorite actors of all time, Popeye.
Oh, the Robin Williams and is it Shelley Duvall?
I think it is.
Okay.
I think it is her. But yeah, it is Robin Williams as Popeye. And I was scrolling through and I saw that and I was just like, oh my God, Popeye. And it was funny because I was like, wow, I completely forgot about this movie because it's, it exists so far back into my brain.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was like, I have to put this as an honorable mention because Robin Williams is one of my favorite actors. And this was a really good movie from my childhood. Plus, every time I think about this Popeye movie, I think about this Paramount Home Videos video trailer thing they put out in the 90s to the theme of Happy Days. I posted it on Facebook. I can share it on Atomic Monsoon.
Please do.
And it is just, that's where I first heard the theme of Happy Days. But it's just like this strange collaboration of all these Paramount movies, and Popeye is one of them. And so I was like, I have to list it. So
Okay, that's a lot of fun. Man,
Mhm.
I don't think I've seen that Popeye movie since the 80s, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. I know I definitely saw it as a kid. And remembering that the living room that I was living in, because we moved 6 or 7 times when I was a kid. I
Mhm.
remember which house I was living in, and I think we moved out of that house in, I want to say, either 89 or 90, maybe 91. So there's a really strong chance that I haven't seen Popeye since the 80s, potentially the very early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But I remember having fun with it.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
So Andy, what is one of your favorite 80s movies?
Okay, so I mean, listen, everyone is going to be able to pick. If you've been paying attention to this show over the last since October,
Mhm.
you're gonna know what my number one favorite 80s movie is. So we're gonna save
Yep.
that for later.
Yep.
And I'm gonna jump in with maybe a less expected pick.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with The Last Unicorn.
Oh, okay.
The Last Unicorn was an 1982 animated film. It was based on the novel by Peter S. Beagle, who also wrote the screenplay for the film.
Okay.
It was animated by, I want to get this right, Rankin Bass, not Ruby Spears, which I often say by mistake. It was Rankin Bass. Rankin Bass obviously did the stop motion Rudolph and Santa movies in the 60s and stuff. But also in the 80s, they did Thundercats, and they did the animated Hobbit and Return of the King movies. So it's got it's an almost anime style, but it's not, because it's an American production company.
Yeah.
But it's a very kind of fantastic look to the movie. Like it doesn't look like a Disney. It does not look like a Disney movie at all. Yeah. It's the story of a unicorn who finds out that she is the last unicorn. The unicorn herself is voiced by Mia Farrow. And let's see, Alan Arkin is in there. A young Jeff Bridges is one of the voices.
Wow.
Angela Lansbury is a voice. And Christopher Lee plays King Haggard. And when my roommates had never seen it, so because we've been doing movies every night during quarantine, we watched. I picked that movie to watch one night, and like the instant Christopher Lee came on screen, it was like, yeah, that's Christopher Lee. There's no mistaking, Saruman from the live action Lord of the Rings, or Dracula from the old Hammer Dracula movies,
or Count Dooku from Star Wars,
or Count Dooku from like you hear Christopher Lee, and it's like, yeah, that's Christopher Lee. There's no way that's not him.
So just a quick side thing about Christopher Lee. Interesting fun fact. There was a brief time where, and I actually looked this up, where he actually voiced the wizard. Gosh, I'm gonna have to look up the wizard's name, but he voiced the wizard character. What you've seen the old Phantasmic Sorcerer's Apprentice, right? The old Fantasia thing.
Yeah.
Well, he voiced that wizard character that Mickey is apprenticed to.
Oh,
the sorcerer.
Yensed. Yeah.
Yensed.
Yeah.
He voices him in Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's
the first
Disney
time I heard him talk, I was like, wow.
Yeah, the wizard's name is Disney backwards, which is how you remember it.
Oh, that is helpful now. Thank you for that.
Yes. I can never remember which order the letters go in backwards, but it is Disney backwards is the sorcerer's name.
Well, that's helpful. So thank you. Anyway, back to The Last Unicorn.
Yeah. So The Last Unicorn it was one of those movies that, like, you know, as a young boy in the 80s, I didn't want to watch a movie called The Last Unicorn, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's a girl movie, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, society just enforces gender roles upon us, and we live with them until we grow up to know better. Mm-hmm. Or we have parents who are like, yeah, that's kind of crap. Don't buy into that. So The Last Unicorn, it turned out, was one of my mom's favorite movies. So she ended up buying a VHS. Like, she special ordered it from a Blockbuster Video because it was, you know, back when Blockbuster existed. Yeah. And I don't remember if we all sat down and watched it or if she was watching it and I was just like, yeah, I guess I'll check this out too. But it kind of blew me away. So it was one of the first things I bought on DVD. I know I bought like an anniversary edition DVD for my mom years later because she just had the old VHS and had never bought a new copy. Mm-hmm. And I eventually bought the novel, and I got like 3/4 of the way through, and I was like, I don't feel like I need to finish reading this because it was exactly the movie.
Wow, that's hard to say about a book.
Yeah. Now, there were a couple of things, like, obviously there was more description in the novel because it's a book, right? So the things that you would be seeing, you just had to read the descriptions of. Yeah. And there were a couple of tweaks to dialogue here and there for the, you know, because the way that you read is different than the way that people speak, right? But other than you know, playing to the format, and I think it's because Peter S. Beagle wrote both the novel and the screenplay. I think it's because it was the same guy doing both of them that it was like, yeah, it's going to be accurate because it's his story. Mm-hmm. And then last year, maybe 2 years ago now, I got the chance to see The Last Unicorn. The Film Bar in downtown Phoenix did a screening of it. And I got a chance to see it on the big screen for the first time. And there were things that I noticed on the big screen that I've never seen in the dozens of times I've watched the home video version. Huh. So, yeah.
That's neat.
So it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Have you ever seen The Last Unicorn, Stephanie?
I have not, but you know what's strange is that as of recently, and it's not because it's not because you've been sharing it, but other people I know have been sharing pictures and photos and things like that from it in my Facebook feed in the past couple of weeks. So now I'm actually curious to watch it because everyone's been talking about it, and I know you've been talking about it before. So now I'm just like, okay, now I feel like fate's just telling me I need to watch this movie.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, like, it's not the best movie in the world. Like, I will gladly admit, like, there are better movies. There are better fantasy movies in the 80s, but I do kind of feel like it's I don't know, it is one of my favorites. Again, partially because it was one of my mom's favorite movies, so we watched it a bunch as kids. But yeah, it does things that other animated movies of the decade weren't doing. Yeah. So, you know, I think it's worth trying. And also, it's like 90 minutes, so it's not even like it's going to take you all night to watch or anything. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Cool.
So, how about you? What's one of your favorite 80s movies, Stephanie?
So, what's funny is I actually asked. I was actually talking to my husband about this, and I asked him, like, what do you think are some of my favorite 80s movies? If you had to actually guess, and a lot of them he guessed were very much pointed toward, pretty much owned or made by Disney, which.
Right.
He's not wrong.
Right.
That I do enjoy.
Specifically did not include any Disney movies on my list because I figured you would have them on yours.
Yeah. Oddly enough, I'm going to have some that I don't think you would have expected me to have.
Sure.
I mean, you maybe, but the audience probably not. Um, but I'm gonna hold off on the Disney movies, and I'm actually gonna go to. So I couldn't choose between either of these films. Both were made in the 80s. Both
Uh-huh.
and both are part of the same overarching universe. But Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade, the
Interesting.
Indiana Jones movies.
Okay.
Um,
Those
so
were not the two movies made in the 80s that were from the same film franchise by LucasArts that I was expecting you to say.
oh, don't worry, those are on my list too.
Okay.
I just like your list. How you have your favorite that you're going to say later. I'll say mine later.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair
but
enough.
I thought I would go ahead and start with these ones because at the time after I had been introduced to Star Wars and everything, my dad had finally sat me down and we watched Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Temple of Doom and The Last Crusade and all these Indiana Jones movies.
Sure.
And at this time, this was before the fourth one came out.
Okay.
But for those of you that don't know, which I'd be surprised if you didn't know this, so Raiders of the Lost Ark came out in 1981. It was obviously directed by Mr. Steven Spielberg and written by George Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
And it stars Harrison Ford and Karen Allen, Paul Freeman, a few other relatively big names, John Rhys Davies, and it's I feel like I don't need to really explain what all Indiana Jones is about because everyone I feel like has seen the Indiana Jones films, but as a kid, growing up and now starting to get more into these action films and these adventure films, Indiana Jones was kind of this one that I was not expecting myself to truly enjoy as much.
Sure.
But I really do enjoy it. However, I will, honest to God, admit when Indy tells Marion to close her eyes and not look when the spirits of the Ark are flying around, I do the same thing. I don't look.
Okay.
Hey, it's like when if you've ever ridden the Indiana Jones ride at Disney and they say don't look into the eyes of the statue. I don't do it then either. And it's not because, I'm afraid of getting cursed or anything like that, or the spirits are going to come popping out of my television. It's literally because I don't do well with jump scares.
That's fair. That's totally fair. Yeah.
And so if I look into the eyes, I feel like something's going to pop out and freak me out. So it's just better to close my eyes and just go through and then open them up once we pass it and go through the rest of the ride.
Yeah.
Or close my eyes and let them eat all the Nazis. But
Sure.
yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed Raiders of the Lost Ark. But the reason why I couldn't choose between it and The Last Crusade is because I actually really enjoyed just the overarching humor and adventure and just the banter between Sean Connery and Harrison Ford as father and son.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And also the fact that there's we're learning about the Holy Grail and they're going to go look for it, and it has that it has a beheading scene and the guy drinking the wrong Grail, which fun fact, the guy who drinks the wrong Grail is also in another movie that I'm going to be listing later. So that's an interesting fun fact. Same with Harrison Ford. But yeah, no, I just grew up loving these movies and absolutely adoring them and just thinking that they're absolutely nothing but fun. That I think one Halloween as a kid, me and my brother, he dressed up as Indiana Jones and I dressed up as I don't remember her name, but she's the main villain of the fourth film.
Sure. Okay.
The Russian woman. But it's just fun, and these are just classic action adventure films. And I mean, if you see the hat and you see the whip and you hear the classic dun 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 dun, you just immediately know you're going on an adventure, and that's what I love about these films.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. What's another one for you?
Another one for me. Well, let's keep on the action adventure kick while we're going there. So we're gonna go to 1986. And we're going to go to a movie by the director of my favorite movie of all time, but not my favorite movie of all time because that movie came out in the 90s. So we're going to go with Aliens. The original Alien, this is blasphemous for most people to hear. I'm not really a fan of that movie.
That's fair.
It's well done. It is a well-made movie, but it's a little too much on the horror suspense side for my taste. But the sequel, Aliens, directed by James Cameron, and of course, starring Sigourney Weaver and the whole cast of Space Marines.
Mm-hmm.
All of whose actors' names escape me at the moment. Yep. Man, it's so much fun watching those characters go to another planet and encounter the alien xenomorph and like the hive of them, right? And there's a hive, right? There's just so many, there's hundreds of them, and the banter between the Space Marines all feels authentic to what I know about actual military people. I appreciate what is her name? The super buff gal in it. The people are trading quips with her about being a woman, and she's right back questioning their masculinity, right? Which, not the best thing to be doing in actual society, but in that culture, that is part of the, military team culture. So like, yeah, this is, and they're all busting each other's chops and other anatomy, throughout the entire movie. So like, yeah, I don't know. And then getting to see, a couple different variations. Like, I guess there's not different variations of aliens in the movie, but like, so that movie definitely was the reason that Aliens became a franchise, right? The first movie was cool and did very well, but there was only like the one alien toy and like a couple of very small bits of merchandising for it because it was a rated R movie, and so you can't really sell toys to that.
Yeah.
But like by the time the second one came out, it was like, all right, listen, all the kids have seen this. Like all the kids have seen one of the two movies now. And I guess it was around the time Alien 3 came out, actually, that they were like, no, forget it. Like, here's toys of all the Space Marines and aliens and different variants on the aliens. And based on the success of this, I think was why Dark Horse Comics got the Alien comic book franchise license. And, I haven't read a ton of them, but the ones I have read have all been a lot of fun. And without all of that success, like there wouldn't have been the Alien versus Predator comics and video games and everything, and movies eventually. So yeah, I don't know, like the first movie's cool, and I don't, it's not my cup of tea, but I don't want to disrespect the movie at all. But to me, the second one is really the thing that pulled the whole thing together.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say it's that one is something I didn't even appreciate until fairly recently, last few years or so. And then again, it was either last year or the year before, one of the Harkins theaters out here actually for their Classic Night Tuesdays showed Aliens, and so my brother and I went and we both went and saw that for $5 a piece, and so I got to see that on the big screen too.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would say, what's one of yours?
So another favorite of mine from the 80s. Now this one is very much the definition of cult classic. Okay. In the sense of Disney films. So, for those of you that don't know, after Walt Disney passed away, there was a period of time called the Disney Dark Ages.
Yeah, the Dark Ages.
And that was when Disney was pumping out movies and animated features that just were not doing it for the box office. They were not doing it they weren't doing it for the audiences at the time, but audiences grew to love them over time, which ended up getting, the term cult classics. But it wasn't until 1989 when The Little Mermaid came out, and then the Disney Renaissance happened, and, they started swimming in the money. And that's, I think, when Mike Eisner and Frank Welks took over for the company.
I believe
around that time as well.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
But during all of that time, there was one movie that came out that has kind of been seen as like the black sheep of the Disney animated family, and that is The Black Cauldron. I loved this movie as a child. And here's the thing. I did not handle any live action or any movies that involved creepy or horrifying scenes very well.
Right.
But this is the one movie, like this movie and Anastasia, which I'll talk about, when we do the '90s episode. But this movie, like, if you've seen what the Horned King looks like, and if you've seen this movie, it is not for the faint of heart for younger audiences.
Interesting. I'm going to be honest. Black Cauldron is one of those movies that, like, it came out and it got its home video release, and then it went in the Disney Vault and it never came out again. And so I've never seen it.
It's on Disney Plus.
I'm sure it is.
So
is the Horned King? I'm going to look up this character right now while we're talking.
Oh yeah, that's nightmare fuel.
Okay.
But this is also the first and I think the only Disney animated movie that actually has the PG rating.
Okay.
At least of before the 2000s. I think some of the movies after the 2000s, like Atlantis and Treasure Planet and things like that, I think some of those got PG ratings, but this one was the only one of their time to get a PG rating because it was just that kind of gruesome, and it wasn't really gruesome, but it was just way too dark.
Yeah.
Way too dark for the Disney formula. But I absolutely loved it. I mean,
holy cow, this guy's horrifying.
Told you.
I mean, like, listen, I was a teenage Metallica fan. Like, guys with skulls and robes and stuff, like, I doodle those things for fun. But like, this is way too scary for a Disney movie. What in the world?
So,
oh man!
Without spoiling too much, the way the story goes is that there's this young boy who owns a pig, and this pig has this very strange ability. I think this is actually based on an actual novel, so this isn't just Disney making something up.
Sure.
But this pig has a strange ability to see, into the future and see things that are to come. And so the pig, this young princess named Ilanwi, and this strange sloth / monkey / we don't really know what his creature is type, but it's a fantasy world, so who cares? Type character named Gurgi go on this like huge adventure with a bard type character. I don't remember his name. I think his name is Dallin. And they're going to stop the Horned King from getting the Black Cauldron. And there's this, and it's like okay, you hear the sound of that and you think, okay, it's fantasy, and and there's fairies in the movie, and it sounds very, it sounds like it could be kind of lighthearted and like a fun-filled, adventure film. But once you get later into the film and the Black Cauldron comes out and the Horned King comes into play and everything like that's happening, you're sitting there going like, well, whose idea was this?
Man, I gotta watch this movie.
So I mean, yeah, and it's strangely dark, it's strangely creepy, and I strangely loved it as a kid. It was the one movie that did not traumatize me as a child.
You know what? I gotta be honest, I would not have pegged that to be on your list. Despite my earlier comment about Disney movies, I would not have pegged the Black Cauldron to be on your list at all.
Yeah, no, it's because a lot of people assume, especially, and this is no offense against any other Disney fan out there,
sure,
but a lot of people assume that Little Mermaid is one of those movies. For me,
listen,
I like the sequel to the Little Mermaid, the second one with her daughter, more than I like the first Little Mermaid. And I still like the first Little Mermaid a lot.
Sure.
So
yeah.
But that's just because that's what I grew up on. So
right.
Yeah. So anyway, moving on.
Moving right along. Okay, so things that are maybe a little too dark, maybe a little darker than they should have been, and ended up with a rating that the producers did not expect. From 1987, RoboCop.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, so RoboCop is RoboCop's pretty dark. It was released with an R rating after they edited out a bunch of violence that would have made it rated X. In 1987,
wow,
the NC-17 rating didn't exist, so you were looking at
R or X.
Yeah, it was G, PG. PG-13 had just come out, R, and then X. So yeah, it was so violent. The MPAA was like, no, like we can't release this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is a movie from 1987, right? It is 33 years old at this point. So it that level of violence is a little more commonplace in rated R movies these days.
Yeah.
And so as a result, you can't buy the theatrical release anymore. You can only get the director's cut, which has all the violence added back in. And again, a movie that my roommates had never seen, so I was like, well, we're watching RoboCop. And everyone enjoyed it. Everyone had a good time. And the violence, while it is crazy and over the top, it's not. Wasn't as bad as I remembered it being. So RoboCop is the story about a police officer, Alex Murphy, who is killed in the line of duty, and is refitted by Omni Consumer Products (OCP) as they rebuild him as a cyborg. So it's Officer Murphy's brain in a cybernetic body, and then they were able to save his face to put on the cyborg body, but mostly under a mask. And he comes back, and as RoboCop, his deal is he's there to protect the innocent and to be a valiant police officer in a world of corporate espionage and people in conglomerates working with mobsters and et cetera, et cetera. Set in, quote unquote, near future Detroit, right? So near future from 1987. Figure you can figure out when that's supposed to take place on your own. They don't ever explicitly say. But it is kind of an amazing satire on mid 80s, like big city America. All of the news reports are like, hey, here's this terrible, horrific thing that happened in the news. Meanwhile, bunnies. And not quite that extreme, but it is
yeah.
It's pretty bad. Man, I don't know what to say about RoboCop. I kind of feel like it's a movie that either you've seen or maybe you haven't. And if you haven't, I would say maybe give it a shot. It is a fun action movie. It is a little violent, a little gory, but quite frankly, Mortal Kombat 2 is more violent than RoboCop. And that movie that game came out just a few years later. So I don't think it's anything too out there. Also, Kurtwood Smith, who played the dad on that 70s show, is absolutely the coolest bad guy in 80s movies.
Nice.
and is the bad guy that kills RoboCop. And he's just such an asshole in that movie, and he does it so well. And I absolutely believe that he is that character. So yeah. And I want to give a quick shout out to my buddy Steve that I used to work with at Samurai Comics, who owns a shirt that says, "Remember that time RoboCop shot that guy in the dick?" Which is totally a scene from that movie where RoboCop stops a potential rapist. So
very nice.
Good times. Anyways, yeah, RoboCop's great. I highly recommend that you watch it. It is part of the Criterion Collection. It's such a well-regarded movie.
Wow.
So yeah. So that's fun.
Yeah. Awesome.
And quick side story about RoboCop. When we were kids, the RoboCop and the Ultra Police cartoon was on, and there was a Swamp Thing cartoon, because there was a thing in the 80s about making cartoons out of R-rated movies, and I don't know why. Anyways, so my brother and I both watched the Swamp Thing and the RoboCop cartoons and had a couple of the toys and stuff. And one of the things about the Swamp Thing cartoon was when Swamp Thing, which is a whole other franchise I'm not going to get into right now, but when he got weak on power, he had to return to the swamp to regenerate and heal and stuff, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
So my brother, as a 4 or 5-year-old kid, got the idea that if RoboCop went to the swamp, then he could regenerate and become stronger and more powerful. And so he invented the character Swamp RoboCop, which when he described it to me, he's like, no, it's RoboCop, but he has all the swamp plants and slime and stuff on him. And so Swamp RoboCop's been kind of this little in-joke between the two of us, which totally paid off a few years ago when I bought a RoboCop action figure and painted and sculpted a bunch of crap on him so he could actually have a glow-in-the-dark Swamp RoboCop action figure.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so
Which is
cool.
not a story I was planning on telling today. But yeah, let's add a personal touch.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, Steph, what's your next movie?
So my next one is still from the Disney Vault.
Mm-hmm.
This is another one of those movies that existed in the dark ages of Disney, and this one is definitely has a lighter tone to it. It is called The Great Mouse Detective.
I remember that movie.
Mm-hmm. It came out in 1986, and pretty much long story short, it is what if we tell a Sherlock Holmes story, but instead of it being humans, they are mice.
Yes.
And it was, it was one of those movies that, like the Black Cauldron, I grew up with as a kid. That I thoroughly enjoyed and prefer over a lot of other, Disney 80s movies. Like I love Oliver and Company, but I still like this. I like the Black Cauldron and the Great Mouse Detective more, and kind of the same thing.
Okay.
With like the Little Mermaid. But the Great Mouse Detective, it was such a great film, growing up as a kid for me.
Mm-hmm.
I loved kind of like the mystery solving adventure scheming of it all. I loved the music, especially Radigan and his villain song.
Mm-hmm.
Like I actually have that on my Halloween playlist because it's a great just evil song.
Excellent.
Plus it's so funny, it's so witty, and it's just this perfect blend of like action, adventure, humor, and like really encapsulating what Sherlock Holmes did back in the day, like way back when.
Mm-hmm.
But introducing him to a much younger audience, so that way they don't have to get into the original Sherlock Holmes films or TV shows or books or whatever brand of Sherlock you look into.
Yeah, like as great as the old Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes series of films are, like you're not going to get a lot of little kids watching those movies.
Fun fact, Basil. So you know how you said Basil Rathbone played Sherlock Holmes back in the day?
Yes, I did.
He plays Sherlock Holmes in this movie.
Does he really?
Yes, he does. Because there's a moment in the film where Basil of Baker Street, who is the mouse Sherlock, takes him his Mr. Watts, his Dr. Watson, which is Dr. Dawson in the movie, and the little girl Olivia, and they're trying to go get Toby the dog so they can use him to go gallivant through London and find this bat named Fidget who works with Radigan. But there's a point where you actually hear Sherlock talking to Watson, and then they go off and they're going off on their very similar but human version of the mission.
Okay.
So
that's fun. That's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great movie. I always highly recommend it to people, and it's one that every now and then I just got to sit down and watch.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, again, it's a movie that I know I saw as a kid, and I have not seen it. I don't even know if I saw it as a teenager. It's been forever since I've seen it, but I remember it being a lot of fun. So yeah.
It is also on Disney Plus.
Yes.
In fact, all of the movies except for Popeye and Indiana Jones that I have mentioned today are on Disney Plus.
And I believe Popeye is on Netflix at the moment.
Is it really?
I know I saw it recently on one of the streaming services that I was watching. It was either Netflix or Hulu. It may have been taken down since I was last paying attention, but I know it definitely popped up on a recommended for Andy list at some point. So
I know Indiana Jones is still on Netflix. So.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, back to you, Andy.
Back to me with a movie that I don't think is streaming anywhere at the moment. So this movie was an absolute bomb in the theater. It did no good whatsoever. No business. Came out in 1989, and it came out, if not the same weekend, then like either the weekend before or the weekend after Batman. So it was just kind of doomed.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about UHF, the movie starring Weird Al Yankovic.
There's a movie starring Weird Al Yankovic?
Yeah, see, this movie did so poorly in theaters that despite all the Weird Al movies, the Weird Al conversations you and I have had, you didn't even know there was a movie.
I didn't even know.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I mean, you want to talk about cult classics. Like, this is a cult classic movie. So UHF. Someone just popped up on our Skype conversation. Who wants a drink from the fire hose? Which is a wonderful clip from the movie. UHF is the story of Stanley Spadowski, played by Weird. No, I'm sorry. Stanley Spadowski is Michael Richards' character. Wow. George something. Oh man, It's a story of Weird Al, who is just this unfortunate guy that can't keep a job. His brain keeps shifting over to weird fantasies about television shows and stuff.
Yeah.
And through a series of weird events, he ends up being put in charge of Channel 62, a small UHF station on the outskirts of town. Now, obviously, UHF channels only go up to 61, so obviously this isn't a real thing, but, that's fine. Weird Al's whole thing is parody and satire, so perfect.
Yeah.
So they take Channel 62 and they revamp it as the new 62, and they start making, with no budget whatsoever, they start making their own shows because they can't afford to license anything. And over the course of a little while, they end up becoming the number one network in town. This brings, attention is brought to the guy that is in charge of the network affiliate channel. So the thing to remember is when this movie came out, this was still back in the days of there was only ABC, CBS, and NBC, and like Fox was brand new. So the network affiliate was one of those channels.
Okay.
But yeah, so this guy who was the number one in town because he was the local ABC, CBS, NBC affiliate forever, like he was like, why are we not number one? And why is this little tiny UHF station that doesn't matter and has never been anything? Why are they number one all of a sudden? And so, corporate espionage ensues, blah, blah, blah. The thing that's fun about this movie, though, is it's so, you buy a Weird Al Yankovic CD and you get a couple of parody songs, and you get a bunch of original songs done in the style of other artists, and then you get just like his polkas and some original songs where it's just him having fun writing silly jams.
Yeah.
This movie's kind of the same thing.
Oh, dear.
You get some parodies of some TV shows. This is where the Money for Nothing Beverly Hillbillies parody song comes from.
Oh. Okay.
Including the music video. Which looks like the early old CGI Money for Nothing by Dire Straits music video.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And this movie has early appearances by Fran for the Nanny, and Michael Richards before he became Kramer on Seinfeld.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a silly ass movie. Like you cannot take this movie seriously whatsoever. If you're going in and be like, man, I'm going to sit down and watch a great film, like go watch anything else.
Yeah.
But if you're like, man, I want to laugh, I want to watch a 30-second clip about a show called Conan the Librarian. I want to watch a commercial for a movie called Gandhi 2, where Gandhi kills people with assault rifles.
Oh my God.
If you want to watch a commercial for a business called Spatula City, where they sell spatulas, and that's all.
Yep.
Yeah, UHF is pretty great.
That's fantastic. I will have to write this down and go look for it later.
Yes. Yeah. It wasn't streaming last time I checked, but it does pop up on Netflix every so often. So it may be there now. But definitely, yeah. If you want to laugh, if you are the kind of person who likes Weird Al's brand of humor, yeah, definitely go check it out.
Fantastic. Awesome. Yeah, so oddly enough, going down the same route of parody and humor, I actually wrote down a couple of parody humor movies, but I couldn't decide which one to talk about.
Oh, actually, before you on, I'm sorry. UHF is streaming for free right now on tubitv.com.
To the internet.
tubitv.com. If you don't know about Tubi TV, by the way, while we're all locked down watching stuff at home, Tubi TV is great because it's absolutely free. They ask that you sign in, or you sign up and you create an account, but like you don't have to. It's just the benefit is then you get your queue and your list of things you've watched. But like it has a ton of stuff on there, and you're gonna find a whole bunch of gold. So and UHF apparently. So
Yeah, there you go.
yeah. All right,
So.
I'm sorry. Go on.
You're good. No, but I wrote down a couple of parody movies that I thought about talking about, and I thought, well, no, I mean, I've watched them, I enjoy them, like The Princess Bride. I love The Princess Bride. It's a great movie.
I didn't write down Princess Bride because I thought you were going to talk about it.
And it's weird. I wrote it down, but I don't have a whole lot to talk about it because I didn't really get into The Princess Bride till I was much older.
Okay, can I tell you? You know what? While we're talking about it, I want to tell the story about the first time I saw Princess Bride.
Okay, go ahead.
It was the end of the year. I was in 3rd grade. So the movie had been out for a couple years at that point, and it was it was like the last week of school, and so like all of our lessons were done. We were basically just playing games and watching movies. And 2 kids brought in movies one day, and the 2 movies were Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and The Princess Bride.
Yeah,
and none of us had seen The Princess Bride. Like no one in the class except for the girl who brought it in and one of the boys.
Okay.
So 2 people in this class of, like 25 kids. So the teacher put it up to a vote. Who wants to see Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? Who wants to see The Princess Bride? And, living in America in the early 90s, democracy ruled, right? So there were more girls in the class than boys, plus the one boy who had seen it voted for it because he was like, no, guys, I'm telling you, this movie is awesome. But if you're a 3rd grade, so what, like 7-8-year-old boy, like you're not voting for The Princess Bride, right?
No.
That I mean, you go back to I don't want to watch a movie called The Last Unicorn. Like I definitely don't want to watch a movie called The Princess Bride as a little boy. Right? But we ended up watching it because that was the one that got voted for. And by the end of the movie, every single one of us that was like, nope, this is my new favorite movie. Because it's awesome. And if you have not seen The Princess Bride, you should.
You should.
Yeah.
It's inconceivable if you haven't.
You keep on using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But anyway, I wrote down a couple of others, but I couldn't decide on which one. And then finally I came to the realization. I also wrote down Airplane, which is a classic. I wrote down Caddyshack, which is one my dad absolutely loves.
Sure. Yeah.
I thought about writing down Ghostbusters, but we have a whole episode on how we talked about Ghostbusters, so there was no point.
Yeah, same thought with Ghostbusters.
Yeah. But the one I wrote down that I came to the conclusion of was Spaceballs.
Okay.
1987's Spaceballs. So this one, very much like The Princess Bride and many other parody movies, I was not introduced to until much later in life.
Sure.
But one day, a friend of mine sat me down and like, we're watching Spaceballs. You've never seen it. We're watching it. It is a huge parody on Star Wars. Now at this time, this is at a point where I was, I don't want to say sensitive because that's not the right word for it, but I was definitely still at like max. I must take every information in, and I love and absorb and bow before the knees of Vader type, obsessed with Star Wars.
Sure.
Before I calm down and now just have this nice library of all my information.
Sure.
But they said this was a parody done by Mel Brooks about kind of like on Star Wars and Star Trek, and I was just like,
yeah,
okay, sure. So we sat down, we watched it, and now I cannot stop quoting it. It is hands down one of my favorite parody movies.
Yeah.
It is so freaking hilarious. If you haven't seen it, what's wrong with you? Go watch it. like if you haven't seen The Princess Bride, go watch it.
I'm going to tell you a quick little secret here.
Oh?
I saw Spaceballs before I saw Star Wars.
What?
Yeah. Well, because my childhood was weird, and I mean, just in general.
Yeah.
And my parents didn't like Star Wars. So I didn't watch it growing up. I've told that story a whole bunch. But Spaceballs happened to be on TV one day. And so I was like, I don't know what this movie is, but the first couple seconds of it are pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember telling kids in school about it, and they're like, "Oh, that's Spaceballs. It's making fun of Star Wars." So yeah, I actually saw Spaceballs without knowing what it was or what it was making fun of,
That's
and
fantastic.
still thought it was a funny movie.
It's fantastic. It's such a great film. Um,
I'm still waiting for my Spaceballs the flamethrower, but
Spaceballs the flamethrower, and of course me, yogurt. Spaceballs the doll. I love how after that moment we just see all these other items that are just Spaceballs the bed sheets, Spaceballs the toilet paper, Spaceballs the merchandising. But yeah, no, it's like there's so many quotable moments from it. There's the code to unlock the air shield moment. There's the I'm surrounded by assholes moment. Yo. There's the I lost the beeps, the sweeps, and the creeps. There's all these great moments, and one of the ones that oddly enough ended up sticking with me, and it wasn't intentional, but it happened in college. We were doing our play She Kills Monsters, which I've mentioned before on here.
Sure.
And my character in the play, in the D&D world that they had in the game, she was supposed to be a dark elf who was a druid.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hold on. We didn't realize this until they put the graphics up, the media up on the stage, and we were looking at it, and everyone started laughing, and I was just like, "What's so funny?" And they're like, "Look at your stats," and I'm like, "What do you mean?" And I look over. And, it said species druid. It didn't say species dark elf. It said species druid. And then type was dark elf, which is supposed to be the other way around.
Okay.
And the first comment that came out of my mouth was, funny. I don't look Druish.
Yeah.
And they got everyone to laugh because they were thinking the same thing.
Fantastic.
So it's such a great movie. It's so funny, so quotable. And it's just, I love Star Wars to death and everything like that, but this is it's such a great parody movie. And, and Mel Brooks did a great job with it. So
yeah.
I'm still waiting on Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money.
Well, there was a Spaceballs animated series that came out in the early aughts. The less said about that, the better.
Yeah.
It didn't live up to the promise, but still, go watch Spaceballs.
Indeed. Go watch Spaceballs.
All right, we've only got a few minutes left, so
our favorites.
Time for our favorites. Look, it's Transformers the movie.
You already knew that.
Yeah, you knew it was Transformers. I'm sure I've talked about it enough on this show, so I don't want to drag you too much down with it. But as a kid whose parents were very into telling me the difference between fantasy and reality, I didn't have a lot of the problems with that movie that other kids had, like when Optimus and the other characters all got murdered. I was just like, cool. All right, they're dead. Whatever. It's a cartoon. And then, when there were new characters and the new Autobot leader and stuff, I was like, cool, more toys to buy. So, and then as a kid, I was just like, cool, I'm going to play with all of them. I had Optimus and Rodimus Primes both hanging out, being friends. And one would lead one mission, one would lead the other. Anyways, Transformers the movie is, again, a cult classic. I've gotten to see it in theaters a couple of times. I even got to introduce it at one of the screenings, which was a lot of fun. Got to do some trivia and, give away some prizes and stuff beforehand. Yeah, and the cast in that movie is legendary as well. You got Orson Welles playing Unicron, the transforming planet. Leonard Nimoy from Star Trek plays Galvatron. Robert Stack from Unsolved Mysteries is in it. Eric Idle from Monty Python plays Wreck-Gar. And Judd Nelson plays Hot Rod. Judd Nelson from The Breakfast Club and all of the fun 80s stuff he did. Plays the new Autobot leader Hot Rod / Rodimus Prime. So yeah, lots of fun celebrity appearances in that. Plus basically every legendary voice actor of the 80s is in it. So yeah, good times. You knew I was going to say Transformers, just like I know what Stephanie's going to say right now.
Okay, well, here's the question, though, because there was two that came out in the 80s. Which one do you think I'm going to talk about?
Well, here's the thing. If you were anyone else, I would suspect you were going to say Empire Strikes Back, but it's you, so I'm going to say Return of the Jedi.
Good guess.
And I'm wrong.
So No, you're. So here's the thing. Normally, you are not wrong. You are actually correct. I actually do really enjoy Return of the Jedi. It is one of my all-time favorites of the original trilogy.
Okay.
And it came out in
Top three of the
1983.
original trilogy? Is it top 3 of the original trilogy?
It is, yes, for me.
Excellent.
But I mean, there's only 3 of them, so.
Right.
But the thing is, though, this is something that I will say. There's a reason why I'm not talking about it today, though.
Okay.
And this is the only reason why. But so, as we know, today is May 1st, and
Yes.
on Monday is going to be May the 4th, which is, Star Wars Day.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Well, for me, I actually turn the entire month of May into Star Wars month. And I
Okay.
do it for a couple of reasons. Reason number one is because the first 6 Star Wars films and Solo
Mhm.
all came out in the month of May.
Sure. Right.
All of them came out in the month of May. With New Hope on May 25th, 1977, Empire on May 21st, 1980, so on and so forth. And it wasn't until the Clone Wars movie that dropped in August, and then obviously the new films, which have been in December, except for Solo, which was on, oddly enough, one of the anniversary dates for the original movie.
Sure.
But I really do love Return of the Jedi. I really do love that movie. It is just so action-packed. It's so great, and it's such a wonderful ending to the original trilogy. And it's probably one of the, like, I can quote A New Hope pretty well. I can quote Empire pretty well, but I think I can quote Return of the Jedi just a little bit better.
Sure.
Plus, it has such an emotional fight scene between Luke and Vader.
Sure.
But today, I'm gonna actually say Empire.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm saying Empire is if you caught what date I said for the release of Empire, The Empire Strikes Back is turning 40 years old this year.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. So, and plus, who can beat the biggest plot twist of all time of, no, I am your father.
Spoilers.
It's 40 years old. So.
It's 40 years old, and there were 3 movies made specifically to explain that plot. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no. So I really do love and enjoy both films. I think they're both great, and if they sit at the top of my list for any 80s movies I've seen or watched over my lifetime. But yeah, but just like you with Transformers, it's not surprising that my top ones would be Star Wars.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah.
And there you have it. There's the 80s.
There we have it. There are our favorite 80s movies. Not necessarily the best ones of the decade, but the ones that we decided were our favorites, with the caveats that we tried not to overlap each other.
Yeah. It's more fun talking about our favorite films than the best films, because we may have never seen the best films.
Right. Yeah. And listen, it's all subjective anyways. Like, yeah. Okay, guys. Well, we are out of time. So find us on all the socials media. Atomic Monsoon on Twitter and Facebook. Atomic_Monsoon on Instagram. Get an Atomic Monsoon logo shirt from our Redbubble store. Support our friends at Def M Records. And if you have, let us know some of your favorite 80s movies at atomicmonsoon@gmail.com or on Twitter. And we can stick that into our next episode. Or if you guys have suggestions for episodes yourself, let us know.
Yes, all those things. All those things. Guys. Do it.
Well, let's. I got nothing.
May the Force be with you. Wait, actually, no. Wait, hold on. May the Schwartz be with you.
Transform and roll out.